Today we're talking about the baptism of Jesus. And what John is actually doing there in the Jordan is something that's not completely unheard of. As a matter of fact, it's pretty common as far as their religion was concerned. What John is doing is something called a mikvah. Now, the term mikvah is used in the same way we use the term bath, that bath can refer to the actual thing that is in your house. It also can refer to what you do in that bathtub. Mikvah is the same way. So mikvah was used to provide ritual cleansing. We've discovered several of these mikvahs, and they're kind of everywhere. When you find a particularly Orthodox gathering of Jews, there is a mikvah there. In that they're usually about 5 feet wide, and they are about 6 feet deep. And they have stairs because they would be filled with water, and they had to be deep enough that you could walk down to the bottom and the water would be over your head. So the reason that you would need to use a mikvah was either that you had become ritualistically unclean, you had touched a dead body, or a whole host of different ways that could happen, or you may be about to perform a very important ritual in the temple, for example, and in that case you would need a ritual cleansing before you enter the temple. Now, we've discovered several of these. Obviously, the big place for them is the temple, and the ones there are quite large so that several people could use them at the same time. So the ones outside the temple, there were several of them, and we know that they were kind of allied with one kind of branch of Judaism per mikvah. And so the Pharisees would have one, the Sadducees would have one, and you would go up to that mikvah, and you'd give a little donation to the Pharisees, and you would walk down into the mikvah, walk back out. You would be ritualistically clean, and you would move on. And really, what was happening there was much more than just whether or not you were clean or not. At the temple and in a lot of these other ones, it was kind of saying, I agree with the Pharisees, or I agree with the Sadducees. So there's this sort of political dimension to it. And when you combine that with the fact that their religion and their political system were really one and the same, there's a whole lot tied up in what happens at those mikvahs. And the requirement for a mikvah wasn't anything super spectacular. It didn't have to be made of stone. It didn't have to be a certain dimension. The only requirement was that it was filled with what they called living water. And we're going to get more into that in one of the following weeks, but that just had to be natural moving water, like from a stream. And so what we see with John is that he's doing mikvahs for the repentance and the forgiveness of sin. He's doing that not in a Pharisee mikvah, not in a Sadducee mikvah, in the Jordan River, which that rushing water counted for the kind of water that needed to be present for a mikvah to be appropriate. But it wasn't owned by the Pharisees or the Sadducees. It wasn't owned by a particular political party. And so what happens when Jesus walks up to John is pretty profound. And that's where we're headed today.